Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on continuous glucometers, the ultimate shortcut to getting faster results. Hi, I'm Dr. Julie Sleisner. I'm so excited to have you here today because continuous glucometers are an absolute game changer in the healthcare world. And I have been getting so many questions in the office about them because they're becoming more popular and you're hearing about them on the internet that I thought this is a favorite topic of mine. Let's have a webinar. So I'm glad you all could make it. As we go through this webinar, if you have questions, I would love to try and answer them. If you would, in your chat section, there's a Q&A, write your questions. I will answer them towards the end of the webinar. I will not go through the webinar and stop and answer questions along the way. I'd love to, but there's a lot going on with this webinar right now. So I'm going to try and get to those at the end, but I would love to hear your questions. So let's go ahead and I want to just tell you a little quick backstory for those of you who don't know me. I am a chiropractor of over 25 years, and I have spent my entire career looking at the role foods and nutrition play in chronic health issues. As a chiropractor, I was actually really frustrated with why people wouldn't hold their adjustments, because they should hold their adjustments, and most do, and many do really well. But you've all heard the stories of people who just don't get the relief that they were looking for chiropractically. So that really bugged me, and that really shaped my entire career to start looking at other factors. And those factors that are playing a huge role are foods and nutrition, food toxicity, food allergies, nutritional deficiencies, nutritional excesses. So that's really my specialty in practice. But the continuous glucometer piece is actually really interesting. I have been testing blood sugars in the practice for years and encouraging people to do that. The continuous glucometers are becoming more available, which we'll talk about. But as I was putting together ideas for this webinar, I'm like, Julie, why are you just in love with this subject? Besides the fact that you can get great results and the continuous glucometers are more available. But where does this come from? And then it dawned on me, I had totally forgotten. In junior high school, 6th grade, 7th grade, I did my science project on glucometers. I have 4 siblings and a dad who's a chiropractor. Incredibly health-minded family. My mom met my dad in chiropractic college. But so here I am pricking fingers of my siblings to measure blood sugar to see what effects food had. And this is my project. But I didn't know until much later, so this was mid-'80s, that the glucometer only came out on the market for patients' home use about 5 years prior, give or take. So what I didn't know is that I actually had really leading edge parents in the healthcare world that were allowing me to do hundreds of dollars of experiments on my siblings to measure blood sugar. And here I am almost 40 years later, still in love with the subject. I giggled when I remembered that moment because I actually hadn't remembered doing that science fair project. But here we are. I love the topic because it's an absolute potential game changer to help so many things. But let's just go ahead and get started and we'll talk about it. So I do need to give you a disclaimer because I'm a doctor and that's what doctors seem to do. We need to tell you that this webinar is for information, education, entertainment purposes only. And it is designed for non-diabetics and pre-diabetics. This is a great webinar for diabetics, but with those diabetics tend to be medicated, and that's not what we're talking about right now today. So, entertainment, education. If you decide to try a continuous glucometer and have any questions or concerns, please talk with your doctor. And I am not your doctor unless I'm actually your doctor, meaning we have spoken together one-on-one, face-to-face, or over the phone. You have completed new patient forms for me, and I have a file with your name on it on my wall. So and if even you are a patient, if you have questions about this information, we're going to talk about that at a single appointment for you. Otherwise, I'm talking in generalizations, and I don't know if it applies to you. And if you're not somebody I've ever met, not a patient, I don't have a file on the wall, and you wear a continuous glucometer, which I am going to encourage you to do. But if you have questions, talk to your doctor. This is really important stuff. All right, let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to be covering in this webinar is what is a continuous glucometer, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Why would you want to wear one? Some basic ideas and ranges. How do you get one? And what do you do after you have one? So just a little backstory. So we're going to be talking about the continuous glucometers today. But just to let you know how far things have come and why this is really interesting stuff, is that up until about 1960s, if you were a diabetic, well, first of all, until 1960, they couldn't even really measure blood sugar levels very well at all. So if you were diabetic, it was very poorly managed and lifespans were really quite short due to complications. And about 1960s, the doctors started to have the ability in the office to check blood sugars. So people, grandparents, great-grandparents, if you're about my age, might have to go to the doctor's office once a month to have their sugars checked. So just once a month is all they could do from the 60s till about the 1980s. Then all of a sudden, this little monitor on the left, that's more commonly used today that you can get at Walmart, Walgreens, diabetics can check their blood sugar at home by pricking their finger, inserting the little plastic strip into the machine, and getting a read on the blood sugar. And they've got to do it multiple times during the day, but that's how they can monitor their medication use. So this is all for diabetics to be able to measure how much insulin and medication they needed to bring their blood sugar numbers down. Then right around 2000, early 2000s are when the very first continuous glucometers came out. The continuous glucometers were designed primarily for type 1 diabetics. And those aren't the ones we're talking about for this webinar today. Remember, we're not talking about the diabetics so much, but the continuous glucometers had a little sensor that you put on the back of your arm or on your abdomen, and it would be hooked to a machine initially. Now it's your cell phone, and it would continuously read blood sugar numbers 24/7 for 10 days, 2 weeks, a period of time. So the doctors could really start to track, and type 1 diabetics could track their blood sugars even closer, because quite frankly, type 1 diabetes is incredibly scary because of the complications and coma, and kids die. It's really, really serious. So that was the continuous glucometers. In about 2000, then they just started becoming more and more prevalent, but they're only available by prescription. And you would have to be either a type 1 diabetic or a type 2 diabetic that was completely out of control with high blood sugars to even get a prescription for a continuous glucometer. But they're really nice because you didn't have to prick your finger anymore, and fingers get sore, really sore. I've done it lots since the 80s, and I'm not diabetic. So even my patients, I would recommend in the office to go to Walmart. You could get those glucometers, prick your finger, do it multiple times during the day. Let's watch blood sugars. And I'll tell you why it was so important, even for the non-diabetics. We're getting there. But even my super out of control diabetics, I would ask their medical doctors to give them a prescription for the continuous glucometers, and they wouldn't give them to them. Like, it is incredibly hard to pry a prescription for a continuous glucometer out of a medical doctor's hand for a patient unless they're really, really in harm's way. So fast forward a few more years, getting to be about right now, 2016, 2017, the continuous glucometers started to pair with the phone. And just now in the last couple of years, you can get them off the internet without a prescription. Now, it's a little gray area. They're still supposed to have a prescription, but you can get them without a prescription. There's workarounds. We'll talk about it. But the most exciting part are these continuous glucometers have just been FDA approved to be sold over the counter. In any day, it's going to be released. So this technology that we're talking about today applies. Everybody can get their hands on it. And I'm so excited because it's a game changer. So what does this actually look like? You put the sensor on the back of your arm, it pairs to your phone. You don't have to prick your fingers anymore. It doesn't hurt. Here's an example of a chart. This is a 12-hour period where we're just tracking where's blood sugar going? What is it doing? So let's go to, why would you want to wear one? What's important about this? Because blood sugar stress, highs and lows, not even in the range of diabetes, is the gateway to weight gain, diabetes, kidney disease, Alzheimer's, heart disease, hormone problems, inflammation. 80 to 90% of the adult population suffers with at least one of these problems. Amazing. And these are the questions that I am seeing patients every day for in the office. Yesterday, I see stage 3 kidney disease, and her question is, what do I do about it? My answer, let's look at your blood sugar. The day before that, I had a gal I was talking to who said, Alzheimer's running in my family. I'm terrified of Alzheimer's. I have another patient who, that's my consultation tomorrow with them. They're getting diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's. What do I do? Let's look at blood sugar, heart disease, hormone problems, PCOS, infertility problems in 20-year-olds. This is a blood sugar problem. And then, of course, weight gain. Oh my gosh, that's a question I get all the time. I just like to drop whether it's 5 pounds or 500 pounds. Where's the problem with weight gain? Well, let's start with blood sugar because it is the first domino that starts to knock all of these other dominoes over. And then when we see kidney disease, well, that was a blood sugar problem that's been going on for 20, 30 years. Alzheimer's has been called type 3 diabetes because it's a blood sugar problem. So that's where I'm going. Like, if we just get this first domino in order, everything else changes. And I love it because it's so proactive when people can go home and do it themselves. They can deal with their spouses. They can watch their kids. This is fantastic. So about prediabetes, let's talk about that for a second. The numbers are absolutely staggering how many people have prediabetes, and it's just escalating like crazy. But approximately 1 in 3 American adults have prediabetes, and 84% don't even know they have it. And they don't know they have it because when they go to do their regular physicals with their medical doctors, if they don't have enough symptoms, the doctors aren't going to call for the test. And if they do call for the test, chances are their doctors are going to do nothing about it, but just follow up and watch it next year. And you go, well, why aren't they going to do anything about it? Because there is nothing for them to do. There's no medication to give you. There's no intervention. There's nothing to do other than watch it to see if you progress to being diabetic. And if you're really lucky, they'll recommend something like diet and exercise. Okay. What the heck does that mean? I'm a doctor. Explain diet and exercise to me. I mean, diet can go from a vegetarian to a carnivore, and high fat, low fat, high carb, low carb, high protein, and every combination thereof. What kind of diet are they talking about that's going to change prediabetes? And exercise. We have our CrossFitters, yoga, Pilates, walkers, runners. Explain to me. And I've looked through all the American Diabetic Association websites. I've looked at the AMA journals. They don't really have a great explanation on diet or exercise. So, and yet prediabetes is so easy to change. So easy to change. So why would you ever become diabetic if you knew you were pre-diabetic? This is fantastic information that we can do something with. It's actionable. So, a couple other things. If you don't know you're pre-diabetic, and we'll talk about which labs you could ask for your doctor to have run, but just a couple little signs that you have a blood sugar problem. 1, high blood pressure. very much a blood sugar problem. Skin tags. A lot of people and medical doctors even will go ahead and dismiss it. Or you go to the dermatologist and have like those tags that are like in armpits or sometimes in skin folds, and they're just unsightly. No, they're blood sugar problems. Hangry. People who cannot go without eating, they have to eat. They can't skip a meal. They get irritable. They start to get a sweet tooth. They get headache, shaky. Those are blood sugar problems. People who are tired after eating. Oh my gosh, I hear this one all the time. As soon as I eat dinner, I just sit on the couch and want to take a nap. That's not normal. That's a blood sugar problem. Sleep issues. Now, there's a lot of reasons for sleep issues, but a big piece of sleep issue concerns that people have is they can't get through the night without waking, and then they wake with anxiety or brain chatter. That's a blood sugar issue. Fatigue, anxiety, and depression. So those are some reasons why you would even pursue this topic if you have any of those. Some blood work markers that are all coming back to those blood sugar imbalances. Just a few. Elevated A1C. And these are a little technical, but for those of you who already have your labs and kind of dialed in, I just want you to know that these are blood sugar markers. Insulin, C-peptide, high or low, glucose, triglycerides. Triglycerides is one of my favorite labs to look at because it really should be under 100 optimally. And anybody who has high triglycerides, the first place we need to look is blood sugar. And I'll explain why in just a sec. Cholesterol problems, LDL problems, ApoB, that's an important cardiovascular marker, uric acid, LDH, those are all blood sugar markers. I mean, and there's a few other reasons why they can be off kilter, but it's just 80%. Let's go look at blood sugar first. With Dr. Karazian, who I have done a lot of studying under. Dr. Karazian is a Harvard-trained researcher and a functional medicine expert and author of those two amazing books, Why Isn't My Brain Working and Why Do I Still Have Thyroid Problems? Definitely a good read if you haven't. But he says it is almost impossible for a patient suffering from a chronic disease to recover or move towards homeostasis or health if the patient suffers from a chronic blood sugar disorder. It's the first place to go. So I love it. Yes, this is like, I don't even need to, like my whole practice, I've been trying to pick up these dominoes after they fall. And now with continuous glucometers becoming so available, like start there. Everybody just start there. Let's sort that out first. And everything else is just going to dovetail to losing weight, losing inflammation, saving your brain, heart disease going down, like you name it. We are just lining up for some great results. It's actionable. You can do it today. It brings in clarity when people are, well, should I eat eggs for breakfast or should I eat toast for breakfast? I don't know. Let's measure your blood sugar and see how it works for you. What happens if I have spaghetti? Is that bad if it's gluten-free? Or maybe if it's not gluten-free, maybe if I do it with lentil pasta, that should be better. You know what? Let's look at your blood sugar and see what it does for you. So it gives us clarity. It gives us direction. So let's talk about just some basic ideas and ranges. If you guys are doing kind of okay, give me a little thumbs up. I can sort of see the chat a little bit. So if you're there, let me know. Don't ask me too many questions. You can put those in the Q&A, but I can see a thumbs up if you're tracking with me. So basic ideas and ranges. So blood sugar levels should be incredibly stable. Even when you eat, when you sleep, the body keeps things in a very tight range right here. Let's, like this little guy right here, we just want to stay between these green lines. No matter what you eat. The analogy I often tell people, it's like if you were on the ocean in a nice little small boat, but your feet up on the deck, the sun in the sky, we want it to be calm, smooth sailing when we look at those graphs on your glucometer. But, well, I'll tell you the button just one sec. So, and what are those numbers? So a healthy, I want to just kind of give you a little lay of the land, how amazing your body is. Amazing, amazing. Healthy blood sugar, a fasting blood sugar, is between 82 and 88. Prediabetes is a fasting blood sugar of 100 to 125. And diabetes is diagnosed with a fasting blood sugar over 126. Yeah, okay, so what does that mean? Healthy, 82 to 88, is approximately a teaspoon of table sugar equivalent of sugar in the bloodstream. So the whole body, in the bloodstream, you've got about a teaspoon equivalent of table sugar. Table sugar and glucose are slightly different, but we're going to just keep it simple. A teaspoon of table sugar at one time. Prediabetes is about 1.25 teaspoons. Did I say teaspoons before? I meant teaspoons of table sugar. And diabetes is a little over 1.5 teaspoons of table sugar floating around the bloodstream. So the difference between healthy and diabetic is about 1/2 a teaspoon of table sugar. Like, wow, that is keeping things in a really, really narrow range. And for those of you who are familiar with this A1C number, normal fasting is an A1C below, we're going to call that it's actually an HbA1c and hemoglobin A1C, but we're going to call it A1C for short, is less than 5.7%. Prediabetes is 5.7 to 6.4, and diabetes is 6.5 or higher. And an A1C, just to explain that just a little bit, is an average. It's a calculation done on your blood work of your average blood sugar over approximately the last 3 months. So you go, okay, how can they measure my blood sugar average over the last 3 months? What happens is the more the sugar is sitting in the bloodstream, it's sticky. So it will start to stick to your red blood cells. And once it sticks, it's called glycosylated, it can't unstick. So your red blood cells live about 3 to 4 months, and then they're recycled. So they can measure how sticky are your red blood cells, and that gives us the average concentration of your blood sugar over the last 3 to 4 months until that red blood cell goes away. Well, this stickiness is also happening to ligaments and tendons and your skin and your joints. So this glycosylation is a very aging process, but just want to let you know that's why these numbers, the A1Cs, are so fantastic, is because we can see what you've been doing for the last 3 months. So what happens? So I'm going to go back, just a quick refresher. We're talking about a teaspoon of sugar is what we're wanting in your bloodstream at all times. So what happens when you eat Burger King, French fries, Burger King Whopper, and a Coke? And that gives us 132 grams of carbs, which, going back for just 1 sec to give you the gram equivalent, I'm trying to keep this simple, but I just want to show you, we're talking about 4 grams of carbs are what we're looking for. And you just ate 132 grams. Panic and survival. Utter panic is actually going on in the body. Blood sugars are screaming up. Let me see. Let's see. Coming to scream. You can't quite see my pointer here, but this red line right at the top. Blood sugars are coming screaming up. And then the pancreas is secreting insulin to try and escort it back into the tissue. And it's doing this as hard and as fast and as furious as it can, trying to get this blood sugar, the sugar, out of the bloodstream into the liver, into the muscles, anywhere it can stash it into storage. And then the extra that it can't get out of the bloodstream fast enough, it turns into triglycerides, turns it into fat and sticks it to your blood, because then it's at least safe. Because otherwise, if this blood sugar stayed high, you would die. The body cannot allow this to happen for very long. And so it truly is going through large extents of a hormonal cascade to move this, to shuttle this out of the bloodstream as fast as it possibly can. And it's built to do it, which is absolutely miraculous that we can. But what happens to the people who have oatmeal for breakfast, Burger King for lunch, pizza for dinner, sweet rolls, ice cream, potatoes, rice? How long can the body keep going through this stormy sea as the pancreas keeps putting out insulin and keeps rocking this boat until you just capsize your boat? Like done, Titanic sinking. The body can do this for a lot of years. It is absolutely amazing, but it can't do it forever. And as it's starting to lose its ability to keep shuffling the sugar out of the bloodstream to bring it back down to 1 teaspoon, when it loses this ability, you will become pre-diabetic, you'll become diabetic, and this is where heart issues, kidney issues, vision issues, cataract, dementia, this is how it gets here. So here's just another example. Some people would say, well, I ate a little better. It's only a little high. Well, it's still happening every meal. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we're eaters. People are eating 2 meals a day, 3 meals a day, 10 meals a day, constantly eating. And when we're making choices that are not compatible for us and we keep rocking our boat, this is where trouble happens. And it happens over the course of years, but it's going to take you down. Well, not you. I hope you guys are fantastic, because I know some of you, and you're just fantastic. But for a lot of other people, they're really getting in trouble. And this is about spouses and neighbors and friends. I want them to know this. One other idea here, just to bring up Dr. William Davis, who wrote these 3 books. I really like Dr. William Davis. He is actually, so he's a cardiologist, and he's very much into continuous glucometers pricking your finger. He is an advocate that there should be no change whatsoever. I'm saying the research would say just a little wobble on the ocean. He's saying your blood sugar should not change at all from the beginning of the meal to the end of the meal. That is ideal. That is healthy. And I think that that's actually a really good place to strive for. But I just want to let you know, the flatter the ocean, the flatter the line, the better, especially if you're looking for weight loss and to change the course of your health quickly. The flatter, the better. So let's look at some real world examples, just so you can see let's look at some other people's graphs. So here's an optimal. Here's an 84. This is a 12-hour period, just kind of trucking along under 100, middle of the night, stable, stable, stable. That's what we're looking for. So let's look at some not so stables. 208. First of all, we're trucking along here. Well, one other part that I need to tell you too is we're also really looking for, so William Davis, Dr. Davis says flatline, but even the Diabetes Association would recommend for non-diabetics that you should never go over 40 points. So if you measured before a meal and after a meal, you should never be above 40 points higher. I definitely recommend less than 20, but flatter is better. So if you look at this person trucking along really over 100, and then all of a sudden we get to a screaming 208, which is actually a diabetic range if they stayed there. But they come back down, so they're not diabetic yet. This is hard on the body. Here's another one. We go trucking along, right about 100, all of a sudden a big peak. And we want to see after a meal, within 2 hours after eating, that you're back down to a fasting. Fasting is defined before you eat and within 2 hours after eating. So before you eat, 85, you eat, blurps up to maybe 110, and then we're right back down to 85 between meals, fasting. So here's an example of 180, almost 179, and then I really never even got back to fasting. And then after they hit this real big peak of 179 down to 80, that steep fall is really hard on the body. They will tend to feel this, and it's not going to feel super great. They may not know that it's a blood sugar problem, but all of a sudden they're maybe getting a little cranky, little sweet tooth, looking for some coffee. Here's another one where within a short period of time, 105 to 171. Like this is almost a 70-point jump within an hour or so. Hard. And what goes up? will come down until you're diabetic, and then it doesn't come down. Here's on the other end of the spectrum what a low blood sugar looks like. And I have a lot of these people in my practice too. This is hard because what actually happens, so I spoke earlier of insulin is the one hormone that will bring blood sugars down. Low blood sugar is so stressful for the body. It's actually a survival issue. There are 3 main hormones that are bringing blood sugar up. We have glucagon, we have cortisol, we have adrenaline that are kicking in to try and bring sugars back into the bloodstream. So this person is really, really struggling that those 3 mechanisms are not even rallying to get back up to that 85 number. And if this happens during the night, this is a horrible night's sleep. This is a person who might have anxiety during the night, panic attacks during the night, brain chatter, restless, and it's that adrenaline going and the cortisol. They can't get into deep, restful sleep because their body's like, don't fall asleep. We're in a jam here. This is really stressful stuff. And adrenaline makes your heart race and doesn't feel comfortable. So this is a tough situation because the body's not holding it together during the night. And you should easily be able to go 12 hours without any food because the body is shuffling the sugars around the body. Here's another example here. This is one person who was trucking along, hit on 172, came down to 107. So we're not even down to our fasting number of 85. They came down to a pre-diabetic level and then just shot right back up the next time they ate to 167. And this is not healthy. And here's one more, 164. Then they just continue to come down a little bit and are just staying up in pre-diabetic levels right here. And here's another one who sometimes what happens is after we hit these high numbers, the insulin comes in and really overshoots for a lot of reasons, and a person will go hypoglycemic, low blood sugar, and then they have a sweet tooth, looking for some coffee, getting angry, getting a headache. They're starting to get symptomatic, and usually they'll go get their hands on some candy at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's when this happens a lot, and they will self-medicate, bringing this back up again, only to have it go too high, overshoot the mark, and come back down again. So some rocky seas, rocky ocean. You can't sit in your little boat and have an enjoyable day or life with that going on like that for years. So let me look at my questions for just a second. I have a couple questions that people email to me that I want to make sure that I answer. And I do want this webinar to be a little brief, so I don't want to talk too much, but for those of you who know me, know that I can talk a lot on subjects that I love. Let me just look at my questions here real quick. Okay. Why am I not able? Sweat stack. Okay. All right. Here's a question I have. Oh, this is a really good one. So I'm talking about foods. Good question. Foods. People who have worn the continuous glucometers before or have noticed sometimes they haven't even eaten anything, like only had water, and sometimes their blood sugar levels are waiting around. And so they wonder, is this just a food problem? Is it only a food problem? And no, actually it's not. And no, the crazy thing is stress can move blood sugar levels a lot. Electromagnetic fields actually have a big role on blood sugar levels. Exercise, food allergies. Just 2 really quick stories along there. And these are factors that I'm going to tell you about it in a second, but I do want to carry on this conversation later in some additional webinars. But when it comes to stress, it is such a fascinating one because I have worn the continuous glucometer a couple times. And so one time I'm in the morning, haven't eaten anything, got my blood sugar levels, and something happened. I don't even know. Something just came across my desk, and I went from like 0 to furious fast. And I don't typically do that, but I was just like, and we've all had those moments. 10 minutes later, I look at my glucometer, my numbers, and I am up 30 points. I go, what the heck? I haven't even put something in my mouth. And what that is the body is liberating sugars. So if this was a bear attacking you, like it's called a sympathetic nervous system response. Your body perceives the bear might come and chase you. And if it chases you, it needs to reallocate sugars around and funnel it into the bloodstream and into the muscles and into the lungs and the heart so that you can run like crazy. So just the fact that, there was no bear, but I was so crazy, livid fast, my body perceived that as absolute panic. We need to run or fight or do something. We're going to bring blood sugar up. And that would be okay if I actually ran. But now I'm still sitting at my desk fuming with high blood sugars. So we really should have run. But what's fascinating about that is how many people do you know that drive down the road with road rage? They're pissed off at this car, pissed off at that car. They get to work, they're pissed off with their boss, their coworker. Like, this is their life. And sometimes those people also are not eating well in addition to that. But if they could wear a continuous glucometer potentially and not eat at all and still roll with high blood sugar levels and become pre-diabetic and diabetic. Also in electromagnetic fields. There have been instances, there's research where people went into the doctor's office, measured their blood sugars. Well, and doctor's offices, especially hospitals, are like Wi-Fi, EMF meccas. Everything is the electromagnetic fields, the cell phones on the top, cell phone towers on the top of the buildings, all the equipment. It's really a tough environment for electromagnetic fields. So a person walks into the hospital, gets their blood sugars tested. Oh, Mr. Jones, you're diabetic. What? And later they've, in the research, taken that person back out to, say, their car, where things quieted down, removed them from that electromagnetic field thickness, and they're not diabetic. Like, that's how much that stress of electromagnetic fields plays a role. And I say that for so many people who are wearing their iPhone watches. They've got their iPads, they've got their computer on their lap, and then they wonder why they can't get their blood sugar levels down. Sometimes it's not what you're eating. Exercise can bring it up. Exercise can bring it down. These are great conversations to have another day, but it does on how they influence you. And it's different for different people. Food sensitivities, allergies, those can really upset the body too and spike a blood sugar level far higher than you would think it would just due to the carbohydrate content alone. So that's an interesting topic to really get into when we've got to pull apart for some people what's really going on here, because it's not making sense. Let me look at another question here. I'll take one more question and then we're going to move on here pretty quick. A person asked, can I just prick my finger instead of, can I just go to Walmart and do the older style, prick my finger instead of wearing the continuous glucometer? Absolutely. Absolutely. Works really, really well. It's just your fingers. You run out of fingers and they get a little tender, and you can't watch yourself during the night. You can't watch during exercise. I think for the continuous glucometers, I'm going to tell you how to get one in just one sec, but they're about $100 right now, $110, $120 for a sensor that lasts for about 2 weeks. I think that's, and the other ones are much, much cheaper to prick your finger, but gosh, I think it's so valuable to wear the continuous glucometers. That's what I would recommend. So let's go ahead and move on. If I missed your questions, I will come back and look at them. I will send you an email, or even after this webinar, if you have a question, email me and I'll do my best to, I want to get your questions answered. So just know that I'm coming back to you. Okay, how do you get one? So right now you still technically need a prescription to get a continuous glucometer. But like I said earlier, there are some websites where they'll sell them to you without a prescription. And I'm for that. So if you email me or if you send me a DM on Facebook or a message on Instagram, I'll tell you the websites that I know of right now where you can order these and get them without a prescription. There are also places where you can get them with a prescription online, but also keep your eyes peeled, open. These are going to be available right around the corner at Walmart, Walgreens without a prescription. So they're going to be really widely available, but if you want one right now, send me a message. So what do you do now? Here's what I would do. Here's what I really recommend everybody should do. Get a sensor. The sensor goes on. It has the instructions on how to apply it. You can't feel it. It looks a little scary. It's not scary. The sensor I would recommend, which I'll tell you about if I send you the information where to get the sensors, it's going to be the Libre 3. It's got a 2-week sticky patch that stays on you. Go wear it. It pairs with your phone and go experiment. Go see where you are. See what happens when I'm not diabetic. I have good blood sugar levels, but one time I ate bacon and cantaloupe, which I never do. I got a blood sugar of like 170. Whoa. Like, go play around. Go have some ice cream. Go have some popcorn. I ate a low-carb meal one time of just corn tortillas with lots of protein, lots of fat. It was a really low-carb, less than 20 grams meal. It still gets me to like 160, 170 because corn doesn't work for me. So it's not a carb problem. It's a food problem. But go play around is what I'm saying. Go have some alcohol. Go have some French fries. Go see what would be typical for you. Go have a Starbucks. Email me and tell me what happens. Take some pictures of those. I'd love to see your monitors at that. So just a couple little parameters. Fasting, where you should be. Let me define the sandbox here. Fasting should be 80, 85. You should return to fasting within 2 hours of eating. And you should be at that fasting level all night long. Never more than a 40-point elevation with any eating. Less is better. And the no change rule is even the best. You want to be steady like you're sailing on a calm day. You also can just go run labs. If you're not ready to go do a continuous glucometer yet, ask your doctor to run an A1C, an insulin, or fasting glucose. Not all, or I'm saying do them all, because these are numbers where you kind of triangulate and see where you're at, and then compare where you should be. And then if these numbers are askew at all, definitely start wearing the continuous glucometer. If you need some help, you have some questions and you get into this, I am putting together a 3-part webinar series here in the future where we'll get into a deeper dive on understanding this. I was really hoping today to get you an awareness of what the continuous glucometers can do, but I don't want to be too technical. But the webinar will talk how to change your numbers. What do they mean? What's high, too low? What do you do when nothing's working? Because that sometimes happens too. And that webinar series is going to be the not so sweet side of life. The other thing you can also do is work with me one-on-one. On our website, bigskyWellnessCenter.com, there's a button where you can just click for a no-charge preliminary consultation where we can just talk about your concerns. I can work virtually. We can work in person. I certainly can help you sort through this and other health issues. So thank you so much for joining me today. I loved having you here. I'm so glad you listened or you had questions. If you email me your questions, I'll also finish looking at the questions that I have during the webinar. I'll get back to you. If you have other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm glad you came. Have an awesome day.